Chapter 1. The Beginning of the Battle. It started just like any other day, but it would become the fight that changed everything. The neighborhood I had lived in for 15 years had always been quiet, until now. As I walked to my car, ready to head to the police station for my shift, I spotted something bright green tucked under my windshield wiper. At first, I thought it was just another takeout menu. But as I pulled it off, my stomach dropped. A violation notice. I read the fine print. $79 for improper lawn maintenance. You've got to be kidding me. I turned and looked at my lawn. It was exactly the same as it had been for years, green, healthy, freshly mowed. Sure, it wasn't a pristine golf course, but it was well maintained. That's when I heard the sound of high heels clicking against the pavement. Good morning. The voice was artificially sweet, but there was an edge to it that made my teeth grind. Karen Mitchell, our new HOA board member, was making her rounds with her ever-present tablet. She had only moved in 6 months ago, but had wasted no time taking control. She ran for a board position almost immediately, and since getting elected, she had made everyone's life miserable. I held up the bright green slip. Mind explaining this? My lawn is fine. She barely glanced at me, tapping something into her tablet. Section 7, Paragraph 3 of the HOA guidelines clearly states that grass height must not exceed 3 inches. Yours is approximately 3.5 inches. She said it with a smug little smile, like she had just caught me committing a felony. I took a deep breath, remembering my years of training and dealing with difficult people. Karen, I've been a little busy this week. You know, with my actual job keeping this city safe. I'll mow it this weekend. Rules are rules, she chirped, finally looking up. The fine doubles if not paid within 72 hours. She paused, then smiled wider. Oh, and you might want to do something about those garden gnomes. They're not on the approved decoration list. My garden gnomes. The ones my late wife had collected. I felt my blood pressure rise, but I kept my voice steady. I wasn't aware we needed approval for decorations that have been here for over a decade. She gave a little laugh, waving her tablet. New board, new rules. We're bringing this neighborhood into the modern age. No more tacky decorations lowering property values. As she clicked away down the sidewalk, I noticed her stopping at Sarah's house. Sarah was an ER nurse who had just finished a grueling night shift. The last thing she needed was Karen's morning harassment about her garbage bins being out too long. I watched as Karen snapped photo after photo of Sarah's house, and something inside me shifted. This wasn't just about my lawn. This wasn't about my gnomes. This was targeted harassment. And I wasn't about to let it continue. Chapter 2. The investigation begins. Back in my car, I pulled out my phone and opened our neighborhood Facebook group. The complaints about Karen were piling up. Mark, the firefighter down the street, he had been fined for his kid's basketball hoop. The elderly couple across from me, they got a violation for their unapproved rose bushes. Even the local schoolteacher had been cited for parking his own car in his driveway because it was too old and unsightly. I scrolled through the posts, my hands tightening into fists. Karen wasn't just being strict. She was targeting specific residents. Then, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A blurry photo of 2 black SUVs parked in a driveway. The caption read, "Who the hell does the HOA think they are? They sent these so-called security officers to harass my mother." I zoomed in. The SUVs had HOA security stamped on the sides in bold white lettering. I had never heard of our HOA having security. More importantly, as chief of police, I knew every licensed security firm in the county. And Mitchell Security Solutions, the name on the SUVs, wasn't one of them. I stared at the photo. Something wasn't right. Karen thought she was untouchable. She had no idea who she was messing with. Chapter 3. The Setup. 2 days later, I arrived home after a brutal double shift. A bank robbery downtown had turned into an all-night ordeal, and all I wanted was to park my car and sleep. But Karen Mitchell had other plans. There they were. 2 black SUVs with HOA security plastered on the sides completely blocked my driveway. I gritted my teeth as I saw Karen, in her designer suit, walking across my front lawn, snapping photo after photo of my house. I stepped out of my car, keeping my tone level. "Excuse me, Karen. You're blocking my driveway. I need to park." She turned, flipping her perfectly styled blonde hair over her shoulder. Well. If it isn't Mr. Johnson, our neighborhood's most persistent rule breaker." She tapped her tablet with a smirk. "Let's see. unpaid fine for lawn height violations, unapproved garden gnomes, and now, she paused for dramatic effect. Non-regulation mailbox color. I laughed. Non-regulation mailbox color? It's white. It's been white for 15 years. She beamed. According to our new guidelines, all mailboxes must be painted pristine pearl white from the Anderson Paint Company collection. Yours is classic white. A completely different shade. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Karen, these security vehicles are parked illegally. They're blocking access to my property, which is a violation of City Ordinance 20-345. For the first time, her smile flickered. I have full authority as an HOA board member to enforce. I cut her off. Karen, I know every licensed security company in this jurisdiction. Yours isn't one of them. Her security officers shifted uncomfortably. Their badges looked fake. Their shoulder patches were peeling off. Karen wasn't just breaking HOA rules. She was running an illegal operation. And she had just picked a fight with the wrong person. Chapter 4. The First Strike. Karen had no idea what she had just unleashed. After our little confrontation in my driveway, I spent the rest of the night gathering everything I could on Mitchell Security Solutions. I contacted some friends in law enforcement, cross-referenced security company databases, and made a few discreet calls. It didn't take long to confirm what I already suspected. The company didn't exist. No business license. No registered employees. No tax filings. Nothing. Karen had either made up a fake company or was working with unlicensed, off-the-books security thugs. Either way, she was breaking serious laws. But I needed proof before I could make my next move. Chapter 5. Gathering Evidence. I started by checking who else had been harassed. It wasn't hard. The Facebook group was flooded with complaints. Neighbors shared stories of security goons showing up at their doors, issuing threats, and taking photos of their properties. Some had even received anonymous warnings taped to their doors late at night. Then I found something that made my blood boil. A video. One of my neighbors, James Carter, had set up a security camera after Karen fined him for having a non-regulation fence. His footage showed two men in black HOA security uniforms slashing his car tires in the middle of the night. James had reported it to the police, but when officers showed up, Karen had talked them down, claiming it was a misunderstanding. The case had been dismissed. This wasn't just harassment anymore. This was organized crime. And I had just caught them in the act. Chapter 6. A plan takes shape. With the video in hand, I knew it was time to escalate. I called a meeting at my house. 15 neighbors showed up. We sat in my living room, going over everything we had. Fake security, unlawful fines, vandalism. Karen had crossed too many lines. And now, we were going to take her down. Sarah, the ER nurse, clenched her fists. She needs to be stopped. But how? She controls the board. She has money. Influence. She'll just keep covering things up. Not this time, I said. We're not just going after her fines anymore. We're taking this to the state level. I laid out the plan. Report Mitchell Security Solutions for operating without a license. Submit the vandalism footage to an independent investigator. Dig into the HOA's financial records. Where was the money from all these fines really going? Petition to recall the entire HOA board. By the end of the night, we had a strategy. We weren't just fighting Karen anymore. We were dismantling her empire. Chapter 7. The First Blow. The next morning, I paid a visit to the state licensing board. The clerk took one look at my evidence and called over her supervisor. Within minutes, an investigation was officially opened into Mitchell Security Solutions. Karen had no idea she had just been put on the government's radar. Next, I sent the video footage of the tire slashing to an old friend at the local news station. I didn't even need to convince him to run the story. Once he saw the footage, he said, "This is going public." By the afternoon, local media was all over it. Headline: Homeowners Association accused of using illegal security force. It didn't take long before the heat turned up. Karen was officially under investigation. But she wasn't going down without a fight. Chapter 8. The Retaliation. I woke up to pounding on my door at 5 a.m. I grabbed my gun, muscle memory from years as a cop, and opened the door cautiously. Karen stood on my porch, flanked by two of her security goons. She was shaking with rage. "You think you're so clever, don't you?" she spat. "I know what you've been doing. You have no idea who you're messing with." I leaned against the doorframe. You mean the state licensing board? The news station? The cops? Because I think I have a pretty good idea. Her eyes narrowed. You're going to regret this, she whispered. Then she turned and stormed off, her fake security thugs glaring at me before following. As I watched them leave, I knew one thing for sure. Karen was scared. And scared people make mistakes. Chapter 9. The Turning Point. By noon, the state licensing board had issued a formal notice. Mitchell Security Solutions was shut down. Then came the financial records. James, our resident accountant, had dug into the HOA's transactions. What he found was damning. Over $200,000 in fines had been misallocated. Money that was supposed to go to community projects had instead vanished. Guess whose name was on most of the miscellaneous expense reports? Karen Mitchell. We had everything we needed. Now, it was time to end this. Chapter 10. The Final Battle. We called for an emergency HOA vote to remove Karen and her entire board. She tried to fight it, of course. Tried to stall. Tried to threaten. But with the media, law enforcement, and the entire neighborhood against her, she was done. By the end of the night, the vote was counted. Karen was officially removed from the HOA. By the next morning, the state attorney general's office had launched a full criminal investigation into her finances. And just like that, the reign of Karen Mitchell was over. Chapter 11. A New Beginning. With Karen gone, we finally had control of our neighborhood again. The ridiculous fines? Revoked. The absurd HOA rules? Abolished. And best of all, no more harassment. As I sat on my porch, watching kids play basketball in their driveways, I took a deep breath. For the first time in a long time, this neighborhood felt like home again. And if another HOA dictator ever tried to pull the same stunt, they'd have to go through me first.